What is up? The sixth man. We are back. Week 10. We've hit double digits. Some big news on our side is Boris has announced some lockdown news that potentially we might be getting out of the house for once, which is great. You know, we've got to have some positivity, non-basketball related. But I am, how my GM's doing? We good? All good?
Yeah, feeling good.
That's good. That's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to transition over the Atlantic to the Atlantic Division. And every week on this show, I get slandered for, oh, I didn't get picked in the position. It's basically superstar calls, you know, complaining to the ref, oh, you don't support my team, whatever. And what do? I listen to these chumps. So at the top spot, deservedly, in the Atlantic Division, the Toronto Raptors. Wow, what a week it has been for the Six. 4-0 this week. They are above 500, a long way from that awful start that they had. Like Lambert, you've asked, and you've got. Take it away.
First of all, I hope that wasn't a terrible attempt at a northern accent that you just did then, because if it was, never again, please. But anyway, let's talk about the Raptors. They've finally found their bite in Tampa. Like you said, 4-0 this week. They're now above 500 for the first time this season. And they're fifth in the East. I think that's a place that they can definitely finish in the top six now for the rest of the year. And these 4 wins that they've had this week, they've been 4 great wins. Back-to-back wins against the Bucks, a narrow win against the Timberwolves, and probably the most boring game of the season, and a great win against your 76ers the other night as well. So it's not like they're beating nobodies out here. They're beating top teams.
Well, they did beat a nobody team, and that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. And we are not going to talk about the Raptors in a positive light. In fact, we're going to talk about potentially the dunk of the year, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody missed out, I don't know what's been going on. Anthony Edwards absolutely baptized Utah. And I just hope he's okay. So my question for all the GMs is, what is your favorite in-game dunk from your memory?
I mean, you've got to at least shout out Vince Carter in the Olympics jumping over a 7-foot in-game dunk. That is the greatest of all time. Like, I don't know how it could be anything different.
I like the DeAndre alley on the Brandon Knight and the face he made afterwards. I was just he was just so high as well. And like, I've heard Chris Paul talk about throwing lobs to DeAndre. He's like Blake can go up and get it, but with DeAndre, it doesn't matter where you throw it. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like,
it doesn't matter who's there either.
Love to see. Yeah, so obviously that happened, which is one of the low points for the Raptors, but they have been, like you said, on an absolute tear. 2 amazing wins against the Bucks in a back-to-back, with comfortable leads at the end of those games. And for them, somebody I really wanted to pick out, Matt, is Norman Powell. So since the Jan 22nd, he's been averaging 22.8 points per game on 53% shooting. Another player, Chris Boucher, 13.4 points per game, 6.6 rebounds and 2 blocks off the bench. Out of those 2 players, who do you think is going to be more important for the Raptors moving forward?
I think Norman Powell. It seems that of late, the Raptors, what's been working for them is when they played small ball. And Norman Powell has been a really important factor in that. Like you said, the last 11 games, he's averaged 22 points a game. He's actually been shooting 55% from 3 in his last 11 games, 53% from the field, and 94% from the line. So he's in pretty good form right now. And it was interesting that against the Sixers, they started small ball, and then that didn't work. And then they eventually changed and put Aaron Baines in, and then they obviously got the win in the end. But throughout the course of the season so far, what has been working for them has been playing small ball. And he's kind of stepped up in the fact that where Kyle Lowry's missed the last 3.5 games, he's definitely been contributing to the Raptors' uptake in form. And yeah, he got 31 points against the Timberwolves the other night in that game where not many other people were scoring. And yeah, 29 points in the win against the Bucks as well. So he's been excellent.
Just another shout out on the front for British basketball, because Nick Nurse, who actually came from obviously our end, his assistant coach just got hired for the Timberwolves for Chris Finch, who used to coach GB. So that's something which is really interesting. Yeah, that's big for us. That's big for our little island in the state for basketball. Is there anything else you want to bring up on the Raptors for Matt? Any key points that you've picked out from your team that's rolling at the moment?
I'd say the defense has been really important for them at the moment. So they actually have the fewest field goal attempts against them in the league, whilst they also rank 7th for like best field goal percentage against them. So that's been really important, and it kind of shows they can only really get better in terms of their results going forward. And I think that shows in the fact that I think Embiid, he scored, what was it, 25 points the other night, but he only actually shot 6 from 20 from the field. So if you're keeping a player like Joel Embiid from scoring from the field, that's definitely a positive. So defense has been really good for them of late, and as shown by the fact they kept the Bucks under 100 points in their second win against them.
Very impressive. And coming from a fan who's in the Eastern Conference, I do not want to be seeing Raptors in a playoff series. Well coached, hard-nosed team, and just a gritty team, and they've really bounced back really well. So I'm very impressed. Speaking of the Sixers, really tough week for my team. We've had a long Western Conference road trip, which hasn't ended well. We were 2-2 this week, 20-11 overall, and we are hanging on to the number 1 spot by a thread. Jay Wild, talk to me.
Absolutely, yeah. Nets are closing in on that number 1 spot, as you say. So it's looking a little dicey. But we didn't have Ben for 2 of the games this week. I don't think, as much as I think they've had such a good start to the year, but when you hit a point like this in the season midway through and they run out of steam just a little bit, that sort of mid-season lull, I don't want to overreact too much. There's been some really positive stuff going on. We've had two of the players, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They both had career highs this week, which is really cool. Ben Simmons had 42 against the Jazz. Obviously, ended up losing that game, but it took Jordan Clarkson to score 40 points for them to lose by like 8. So, look, that's not taking anything away from them. That's an awesome win, but that was a really good game, and it was nice to see them play so aggressively without Joel. And it's nice to see that Tobias Harris and Ben can score like that, even without having Embiid on the floor, who, by the way, is getting triple teamed in the post like constantly, and yet somehow still scoring. Which, when he's doing that, it's like unbelievable, because you think about if you're a defensive player and your mindset is, I've got to cover my guy in the corner, but if that guy gets it on the block, I've got to run down as quick as possible. If your energy is going into that so much, that's going to affect your overall game because of how much energy it's taken just because of one player. That's one of the things that I'm seeing with them, and what's really cool, especially from the Joel thing. Sometimes I like to dig a bit deeper and talk about some bench stuff, but bench has been pretty ugly with the Sixers, to be honest, as of late. So when Joel's having the time of his life right now, it's hard not to just harp on about it. One of the things that's really key is that he's running in transition now, which he just simply hasn't been in shape to do in previous years. So you look at that game against the Bulls where he had his career high of 50 points. They didn't even have Ben, but the link up between Tobias and Joel with the high to low action of the two bigs has been incredible. The chemistry those two guys are getting is fantastic. Now that Ben is running in transition, you look to see more link ups between Ben and Joel, because Ben likes to push the ball, and if you got Ben going full steam ahead and Joel trailing, pick your poison. You're getting dunked on either way. So I love to see what's going to be happening, what's going to be happening moving forward. The only thing I would say, I just love to see some more depth and a bit more coming off. Talked about Korkmaz in previous weeks and how he can get hot and either extend and maintain leads, but that hasn't been happening in the past 4 games, which is why they've taken 2 losses, in my opinion.
Interesting stat I found out from the Ben Simmons game against the Jazz, which we obviously were all shocked by, is the lineup where he had 4 shooters with Mike Scott, the center, was actually +1 against the Jazz team, which is second defensively, which is pretty impressive. But I'm not going to talk about Ben just yet. I'm going to talk about Doc Rivers. He was announced as the head coach for the Eastern All-Stars. When asked, he said, "I'd rather be golfing," which is quite funny. And then he said, like, "Oh, it'd actually be funner if I get to pick a coach that has to go." And then he said he picked Pop, which is really funny. Question I wanted to ask you, Wild, is: do you think that he is the front runner for Coach of the Year?
I think that I don't think so personally, because look, he's obviously done such a good job turning them around, and the biggest issue with the Sixers, it now seems, and we expected at the time, was the coaching, and they're not being able to figure out how to work these 2 generational players in Ben and Joel. But just because he's come in and been him, I don't think has necessarily made him the best. In all honesty, I think it needs to go to Salt Lake. It's not just because I'm scared of his face. I think that he needs to be Coach of the Year. The job he's doing with the Utah Jazz is just incredible, basically. So I think that should be Coach of the Year. That's the front runner for me at the moment. So I think, no, he's done a fantastic job, and he's one of the main reasons we are where we're at. But no, I couldn't give that to him.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Not to rain on this Philly parade. Why would Doc even be in consideration? What are Philly doing this year that's so different to what they're doing last year? Do they have like so many more wins this year than last year? I'm just trying to understand why Doc would be in this conversation.
We were 6th in the East with relatively the same team. Yeah, a couple of changes, but we're first in the East right now. Go on, Marty.
I think where Ed's skepticism is coming in is that for the past 4 years, it's always been, Philly could get to the finals this year. And it's never happened because of certain things. It's more about now the way they're doing it. They feel like they're playing different. They've definitely figured some stuff out. We could be accused of talking ourselves into Philly again, and we might be disappointed yet again. But I think with the teams that they actually have to beat, they actually match up really well with a lot of those teams because they're really big. They have somebody in Joel that not a lot of teams can stop, even if they triple team him, as I've been saying. But as I said, the only thing that might hurt them is that depth.
Got to beat better teams on my side of things. We just haven't beat good enough teams. And Seth Curry is struggling as well, and the depth needs to pick it up. So, yeah.
That's true. Just a quick point on Seth. Yeah, I mean, he had that 25 points. I forget which game it is in this week now. Forgive me. But one of the things I always say about Seth is that even if he's out there, it's like what everyone says about Kyle Korver. Even if he has a bad shooting night, you have to guard him as if he's going to score it, because he's so efficient. So just his presence will create room and space for everybody else, because you have to respect him, because the last thing you want is him going off. Even if he's not, he's still effective out there.
Let's move on to another team which is really struggling. 2-2 this week. They're bang on 500. Slightly disappointed, I'm not going to lie, even though they are one of my biggest rivals. Talk to me about the Celtics, bro.
I'm disappointed. This is not fun. I want to say they were like my first pick, because I was like, they're going to be better than this. They are. I mean, look, they're 500. They're in the pack. If they go on a little winning streak, then they could get as far as the 3rd seed. Do I think that's going to happen? Absolutely not. They don't look good. They got a win against the Nuggets. Jokic torched them for 43 points. And the only reason they won is because the Nuggets shot 26.5% from behind the 3-point line. It's the only reason. So they get lucky there. Then they had a couple of games with the Hawks. I'll talk a little bit about them. And I actually want to ask Wildy, because he probably watched them. But Trey torched them in the first one for 40. No Kemba. And the Hawks go 57% from the field, and they lose. Second game, Kemba comes back, has 28 points. I mean, it's not a particularly difficult defensive assignment, but they the Hawks drop. Yeah, the Hawks drop off. They only shoot 42%, and they managed to pick up a win there. Wildy, did you watch those?
I didn't watch them in full, but I caught it condensed. I think that we, as documented last week on the show, we were having a real tough time with it, and we lost the last 10 or last 12 or whatever the number was. If usually you would have somebody like a Marcus Smart guarding Trey, when you got Kemba with a bad knee guarding Trey Young, he's going to go off and go mad, and we'd do some wins. To be honest, so I think you guys caught us on a good night. Boston needs to figure some stuff out, basically. So they're at a low point in their season, and we're going to be on the incline, which is why you got the result that we got, basically.
Yeah. So you alluded to it there. Obviously, they missed Marcus Smart, who will be back in mid-March. That is a lot of games down the road, though. And they don't really have anyone beyond Tatum and Brown. It's really tough. Thompson really hasn't worked out. Teague hasn't really worked out. And in the final game of this week, it became super apparent because they went up by 24 against the Pelicans, and then they got absolutely hammered in the paint. Zion just turned it on, and that they were down 24. That team was beaten. And I heard Bill Simmons talking about it. Apparently, they looked like they were beaten. And, experienced teams don't let this happen. It's important to note this Boston, the court, there's only 5 players left from that Eastern Conference Finals run they had a few years back. They've had a lot of changes. And, it's not a team that plays in and out. They got hammered by the paint. It ends up going to overtime and they lose. It is concerning. They need to make some moves. They have got that big old trade exception, and we talked about some potential pieces for them last time. One of them I didn't mention was Thaddeus Young on my Bulls. Who would
love Thaddeus Young.
Honestly, I think so many championship caliber teams should be looking around at Thaddeus Young and going, we need him. However, I don't know if the Bulls would give him up because he's incredibly important to them winning any games because he is essentially the backup center. That's another story. They need to look for more. And my biggest concern with them though is Brad Stevens' inability to do anything with the roster they've got. I think he should be doing better. I think he's shown in the past he can do better. And I think especially from an offensive standpoint, their offense looks stagnant at times.
Can I bring up a point about the offense, Bray? This is something that I found. So their transition offense has actually dried up. So they took 14% of their shots within the first 6 seconds through the first 16 games. Since then, it's dropped to 9.5%. Do you think this is playing into this? Because obviously transition offense is normally easy opportunities, a chance to build points on the board. And obviously your defense is rewarding that transition.
You're absolutely right. And it showed in the Pelicans game because there were times where they were bringing the ball up, only getting over the half court with no pressure. They were just being slow. They're getting the ball over at 16 seconds. And then all of a sudden you have to go to Tatum or Brown with 9 seconds left and just have them, make a move, create something. And that's not good offense. You can't play like that. And it's really tough. I think Kemba doesn't help because he's a shadow of his former self. He's not shot the ball well. He's really, really struggling. But you've got to figure something out. You've got to put some schemes in. And then I would say Marcus Smart obviously still lends into it, not with his offense, but with his defense, as you say, getting those steals, getting those stops, and then allowing them to get out and run.
Mark my words, guys. The next time we talk about the Celtics, Danny Ainge will have made a move. I'm pretty sure they're going to make a move.
So.
I'm calling it now because Danny Ainge is known for this, and he's pulled off. He's hoodwinked Philly. We should have had Tatum. So I think he's going to make a move. I'm hoping he does. More stuff to talk about. Man, I'm hyped to talk about this team because we're gonna talk about this later. He's looking smug again. I don't want to give it to him, but yeah, the Knicks. What a turnout! You know, they're 2-1 this week. They're right around by the Celtics.
Who was
They're
that loss
15-6.
against? Who was that loss against?
Well, they had a postponed game, didn't they? And their loss against was the Magic, but we're not talking about the Magic.
I'm just saying that I think no.
Yeah,
to be fair, the Magic loss. It's an understandable loss. The Magic went 3-0 this week, so it's fine. It's an understandable loss. They lost against a much superior team, so it's fine.
All right, but we're talking about the Knicks then. So I need you to refocus. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Knicks. Yeah, so wins against the Hawks.
Yeah.
They lost against the Magic. Game postponed against the Spurs, and they beat the Timberwolves. So they're 15-16 at the moment. Talk to me what's happening in NY.
So since we last spoke about the Knicks, which was 9 games ago, they've gone 6-3, which is quite nice, and they are 1 game away from 500. So Boston, you better watch out because we're coming for you. We're coming for you. The majority of this is down to their defense. They've got the second best defensive rating in the league. And when it does come to offense, it can be very hit and miss. They've had some quality in those last 9 games. They've had some quality wins against Portland, Atlanta, and Houston. And then they've had some losses back-to-back against the Heat, which is a bit disappointing, and also lost to the Magic. So I'm not sure if it's just a Florida thing, but that's just been the Miami's New York's last 9
game
games.
against the Heat, though. They only lost by 2.
Yes, which is focused on the second game. It does seem to, most of these back-to-back games, when it's against the same opponent, the second game, if the first game was about, the second game is always much closer, and you expect the other team to win. But it was a bit disappointing then from Knicks' perspective that they couldn't sort of get that win, and that's why I want to talk about their offense. Now, that game came to the end, and there was a possession. The end of game possession is an ISO play to Julius Randle, where he drives to the right and then shoots a floater, which shoots a fadeaway, which wasn't the most efficient shot that you should be able to find. Surely you should be able to find something better. And the reason I bring that up is whenever I watch the Knicks, I just feel that they've got just so much ISO ball that their offense is just so standard. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing inventive. It's just so bog standard. I guess part of it is because Julius Randle is who the team revolves around. And ever since he's been in LA and even in New Orleans, I loved his one-on-one play, his ISO play. You can give him the ball back to the basket. He can create something, which is what he proved during the Lakers, guys, because I felt he was the best Laker when that young core, when they had Brandon Ingram, when they had Lonzo, I felt he was their best player, just because he could do that. Although it would be quite interesting to see if you were to put all of them on a team now with Lonzo, Ingram, Jordan Clarkson off the bench. That would be a really fun team to see now. D'Angelo Russell. Anywho, getting sidetracked.
Did we become a Laker dynasty, Lord Johnson?
Well, first we get rid of the players who send inappropriate ravens. I was like,
how true was that?
Who that is.
Got that spot on.
Yes, so I wanted to check this out. Like, let me have a look at the stats, see how ineffective their offense is. And they've got the second lowest assist rate in the league. Only Portland have got less. So it is a lot of ISO ball and not necessarily a lot of ball movement. And that's also why I think the Derrick Rose trade is good for them, because currently Julius Randle is leading their team with 5.5 assists a game, and second is Alfred Payton with 3.7. I mean, Julius Randle, he's cool and whatnot. He should not be your leading assist getter. He's not Jokic. He's not getting you 10 assists a game. And most of Randle's assist is he's posting up, and then whenever he gets a double team, or he spots someone open, he'll lay it off to them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what Derrick Rose can provide with more minutes and his ability to play make better than what else the Knicks have on their team.
Interesting fact for the Knicks. This is crazy. So the Knicks are 9-6 against teams with winning records and 6-9 against teams with losing records. I mean, what can you pick from that? It's a team that plays hard. I know Bray will know this because Tibbs runs people into the ground. But he's a great coach, and he gets the best out of his players, but defensively anyway.
Yeah, we've spoken before about the Knicks having the best defensive three-point percentage in the NBA. And I guess when you can stop the big teams from getting their three-point shooters going, you have a great chance of winning. And they've proved it in various outings, as I mentioned previously, against the Clippers, etc. It helps a lot that they can stop these high-powered offenses, limit what they can do, and then try and grit and grind with Julius there in the middle and seeing what he can provide to the other players. But I think that's it. Just because of how good they are defensively, it helps against those better teams.
Let's cross that Brooklyn Bridge and head over to Nets, who are 4-0, and I don't think it's going to be before long before they surpass my Sixers. I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried. They're looking scary. No KD as well. They have wins against the Kings, Suns, Lakers, and Clippers this week. Jord, it's looking good. Your House of 03 is playing really well recently.
Yeah, bro, man, scary is right. Like, I think if you look back, when we go back to that Pistons game, I think everyone can agree that was the turning point. When they realized they lost to the Pistons, that was a massive turning point for them, and they turned on the Jets, literally. And right, if you're not scared, look out. Right now, this last 10 games, they've gone 6-4, which isn't too bad. But let's see who they played. Like, they beat the Clippers, 112-108. They also beat the Lakers, 109-98. And they also beat the Suns. Now, the Suns game was an interesting one. The Suns game was insane. So they were down 21 at the half, and then brought it back to win the game 128-124 with a cold final shot from James Harden from the arc as well. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, they're saying that's been the biggest deficit game in their franchise history that they've come back and won. So, yeah, props to them, honestly. It's been so good. And can we mention the Clippers game as well? Again, Harden shows up with that defense to get the charge.
No, you watch your
We will get to that. We will get to that.
You watch your mouth. Talk about defense.
Getting in the way. Hey, we won the game.
Oh, stop.
We won the game.
Stop.
Wash your mouth out with soap.
But speaking of their defense, you have to give them credit for that, because they've come up. Last time we spoke about it, they were 30th in overall defense, so last in the league, and now they've actually
Can only get better, George.
George, they gave up.
Jesus.
Let the guy make his point.
let the guy make his point. Okay, if it can only get better, it can still get better. No one thought it was going to get better. They all thought it was going to be offense, me included, but they made a small improvement. They did enough to win games.
George.
Where are they now?
Huh?
Where are they now?
I think they're in the top 20 right now.
George, they gave up 123 to the Kings and 124 to the Suns.
The Sun Kings. Oh my gosh.
Shit dragon.
I want to bring up a player that is in their rotation. He's actually started a couple of games. Bruce Brown. Okay, good minutes for him. He's only 6'4", and he's one of only 10 players in the league who shoots 70% or better in the restricted area and 50% or better in the paint, which is crazy for his size. What have you seen from Bruce Brown?
I think basically just the effort which he's putting on the floor. I think that's been a key contributor to the games with the Nets. Like, as previously mentioned in the previous games, in the last, I think, 4 games, KD hasn't been present. So to have the input which he's putting in each of the games, like in the Clippers game, he put in 34 minutes, shot 60% from the field for a total of 13 points. Those put them, give the team a major boost. So which helps with the Nets' overall strength. So even when, let's say, KD and Kyrie are out, all the pressure isn't just on the remaining stars to be there. So yeah, he's been a big boost to the team.
That's a big thing for championship contenders, and I've no doubt that the Nets will be down there. But it's very much of, can Jeff Green hit a shot when it really matters? Can they step up? Obviously, one of their stars is going to be open. You know, someone's going to get an open shot, but can their keep a player in rotation, make a play off the bench. You know, can they win a 50-50 ball? That's really what I want to see from the Nets.
So basically, as mentioned before, key props from Harden for those assists, which I think everyone's worried about. But I think, like as I mentioned before, like the key concern was their defense. So to come back the way they did, and mainly, yeah, they haven't I couldn't say they've completely fixed their defense overnight, but the improvements have been there. And even without that, I think they've done to prove that they're still a threat, even though they're not like the top defensive team in the league. They're actually the top team for scoring. So, yeah, still a scary team.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up Atlantic. We will take a short break and then we'll head to Pacific.